It's time for the Game Show Fans Podcast with Josh and Danny. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Game Show Fans Podcast. I am Josh McLeod, and I am here with my compatriot,
Danny Lewis.
And how are you doing, Danny?
I'm doing pretty good.
Today we are going to be talking about the Game Show Network originals that aired between 2002 and 2003. Yeah, good era for the network because that's probably, I think these are the shows that most people associate with the network. Most are the original shows, obviously.
Yeah, I would think so.
There had been originals before then, but none of them had ever really taken off. I don't know if you remember any of them. I remember Love Buffet with Burt Ludden and with Burt Ludden's Love Buffet, and Inquisition was the other one I remember.
Yeah, we need to do a show about that soon.
Inquisition?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't see that till I remember the press around it being really big, and I didn't see it till years later. But we can save that. What do you remember about this era of Game Show Network? You were like a zygote at this point, weren't you?
Yeah, but that's funny because in December of 2002, my dad recorded about 6 hours of programming from this era in 2002 of Game Show Network, and it really didn't have much originals on it, but there were definitely a lot of promos for them. There were promos for Russian Roulette and Friend or Foe and a lot of the shows we're going to get into today.
Mm-hmm. See, the thing I remember most about that is, I think I said this before, I only had Game Show Network for 3 hours a day, so I didn't get to see a lot of these shows, but you'd see promos for them all the time. They promoted the heck out of a lot of these shows.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So, you want to start out with Friend or Foe, hosted by Kennedy.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some people didn't like this show.
I remember liking it at the time, but I was super young, and I remember thinking that it was unwinnable. Like, I didn't even, not counting I'm not even talking about the prisoner's dilemma aspect of it. I just remember it's like you have to get, during the final round, you have to get like 10 questions correctly.
Oh, yeah.
In order to get anything close to a large amount of money.
That's true.
Yeah. So I guess we should describe this show. Like, Friend or Foe is three teams of two.
Yeah, and sometimes, these guys have no relation. They are strangers, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. They, through sort of a prerequisite thing, get matched up with each other to become three teams of two. And then they have to work together to answer questions. And the money that they earn goes into a pot. For each team earns the amount of money that goes into their team pot. And then at the end of each round, one team is eliminated. But instead of just being eliminated with no money, the amount that's in their pot they sort of play for it in one final round called the... what's the name of the box again?
The trust box.
The trust box.
Basically what happens is they can either pick Friend or Foe. If both people choose Friend, they both split the money equally and they all are happy and, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if they both choose Foe, then neither of them get any money and then they just yell at each other because they were both greedy, you know. And then if one chooses Friend and one chooses Foe, the Foe takes the whole money and Friend gets zero. And that happened most times out of anything on that show, if I remember correctly.
I don't think there was ever a single episode where no one picked Foe.
Oh, yeah, you're probably
I'm
right.
sure there were episodes where everyone picked Foe, but I don't think there's a single episode where Foe was completely avoided.
Mm-hmm. I remember my dad didn't like the show because of that aspect, where the Foe would take all the money if the other guy wanted to be Friend.
Mm-hmm.
And some people didn't take it too well when they were given stealing the money from.
Yeah. And I have seen the clip. There's the clip it's from one of the game show compilation videos.
Where the guy just says the F word a bunch of times.
Yeah. That
clip is on my YouTube channel, by the way. Self-plug here. Ding.
We'll put a link to it in the description.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't hate I think, unfortunately, it's not an issue for me because I'm a horrible person. It's not an issue of I found it good or bad. I just found it boring because 9 times out of 10 they're all going to pick Foe, so I just didn't see the point in really keeping up with the show at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I get the piss. Now, when they did it later because this ended up becoming a thing they would do on Golden Balls and that.
Yeah, they in the UK.
And what was it? Not called the White Elephant, but they were gonna take it all with Howie Mandel.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
I haven't seen it. And I don't know.
I never saw it, but I saw Game Shark Garbage's induction of it, which is very good.
I've only seen the clips of it, but again, it's sort of illustrates America's greed.
Right.
Oddly enough, Friend or Foe is probably the least offensive of the Prisoner's Dilemma shows.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think about Kennedy as a host?
Kennedy was good because she usually had a good repertoire with the contestants. Even though she wasn't really a game show host before this, she was more known as a video jockey on MTV back when they actually showed music in the 90s. And nowadays she's I don't know if you know this, but she's like a more conservative talk show host now. Nothing wrong with that, but she's on Fox Business if you want to see what she's up to these days.
Yeah, I thought she was good as a host. I thought it fit her well. It doesn't really work if Todd Newton's hosting Friend or Foe. You really want to see her hosting.
Or Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. So overall, Friend or Foe, an okay show at best. I think.
I agree with that.
Maybe a little bit better. You could probably give it a little higher rating than an okay. It's certainly better than the aforementioned Inquisition. We'll say that. I'll say that much.
I agree with that.
Friend
Friend or Foe is one of those rainy day game shows for me. If that makes sense.
So Russian Roulette.
Oh, Russian Roulette. This is a show that everybody loves. I mean, a lot of people that are subscribed to me, they'll say, "Oh, I wish GSN would bring this show back." And there was, do you remember? I don't know if you know about this, but in the spring of 2008, they brought back both Friend or Foe and Russian Roulette in reruns.
I didn't know that they were rerunning them, but I'm not surprised.
I was 7 at the time, and I was really excited because all I had known about those two shows were just the little clips on that tape I had. So when it came back, I was like, "Oh, this is awesome!" And I finally got to it.
I'd seen a lot of promos for Russian Roulette, and the big thing they were hyping, obviously, which we'll talk about, is the people dropping through the floor.
That's the main point of the show.
And actually, yeah. But I did see I didn't see it rerun regular, but they did have one of their game show Saturday night things where they showed like 4 hours of it straight. So I did see that. That's the first time I ever saw it, and I can talk more about it. But the format of Russian Roulette is 4 contestants, 4 strangers, as the announcer says, are all standing on these elevated trapdoor platform type things. It's sort of like a barrel of a .38 special shotgun. Think about that, but don't actually look in directly.
It's like actual Russian Roulette. No.
Yeah. Don't actually look into the barrel of a .38 special shotgun, but it's like a .38 special. It's 6 chambers, and each contestant is standing on one of 4 of those chambers. And they get asked questions, and if they get it right, they get money added to their bank, and if they get it wrong, they lose all their money. It goes to their opponents, and they have to play Russian Roulette, which in this case means they have to pull a lever.
Right.
And red lights, spin around, a certain amount of red lights, 1 for each chamber. It starts with 1 red light, then they add 2, 3.
After each question, they add a new red light to it.
With the max of 5. They never have all chambers read out. And you pull the lever, and the lights spin around the thing, and if a red light stops on your platform, and then you drop through the floor.
Yeah.
And you're out of the game. And then the last survivor takes the money, and then goes on to a final round where they can win up to $100,000.
Yeah, which was surprisingly big for Game Show Network at the time.
Yeah, which they had a pretty good way of preventing a lot of winners, but we'll get to that in a minute. But how it worked was you had 60 seconds, and the host, Mark L. Wahlberg, would ask questions, and I believe originally you needed to get 5 questions correct.
Well, let's see. In Season 1, it was like 5 brain teaser questions in 60 seconds.
Yeah.
But then in Season 2, because in Season 2 they changed it for some reason. In Season 2, it was just 10 straight multiple choice questions, each with 3 choices, and it was just more. It was more rapid fire than the first season's bonus round in comparison.
Yeah, and you had 60 seconds, and every 10 seconds a platform would drop. And if you ran out of time, the platform you were then the final platform, the platform you were standing on, dropped out from underneath you.
Right.
Or if you answered a question wrong, the platform.
Oh yeah, if one question wrong, then you fall through the hole, and that's the end of the show.
Mm-hmm. And if you manage to answer all the questions correctly before you fell through the floor, you win $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the caveat, which is you can
the $1,000 one.
Yep, you can gamble the $10,000 and play Russian roulette one last time. Now, for every light that is still on, that's how many danger spaces there are, if you will.
Yeah.
If you decide to go for it, you spin the wheel, or you pull down the lever, the lights spin around, and if the light doesn't end up landing on your platform, you win $100,000. If it does, you lose the $10,000 and you fall through the floor.
With just the amount of money you won in the beginning of the game.
Correct. And it was very rare that someone would win the $100,000.
Yeah. There were only 3 people that won $100,000.
And why I bring that up is because the very first episode I ever saw was someone won the $100,000.
Do you remember who it was?
It was a guy, but I don't remember the name of the guy.
Was it Al Winchell?
Probably.
He had his blue shirt.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I remember thinking he was arrogant. I didn't want to see him win. I was kind of bummed that he won at the end.
That's funny. We'll put a link to his episode if I... Yeah, it is on YouTube.
Okay. What'd you think of Russian roulette?
Oh, I enjoyed Russian roulette because as a little kid, I liked seeing people fall through the hole in the floor. Mm-hmm. And even though at that time I really didn't understand how the game worked, but it was an interesting concept looking back on it because it's trivia questions and in the beginning of the round, every question you get, you have to call on one of the other 3 players, and if they get it wrong, then you get to take their money.
Mm-hmm. But if they get it right, they don't take your money, but they get money out of their pot, and they retain control, so they can then challenge you on another question. Mm-hmm. Or one of your opponents. Yeah. I also remember they did a special where they showed clips from another Saturday night special on Game Show Network where they showed clips from international versions of the show.
That's right, I do remember that.
I just remember the version, I think it was the Spanish version.
Oh yeah, they had clips from the Spanish version. They had
Korean version,
India's version, I think, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. People not knowing where Zealand is. I remember that. I knew that as a kid, and I felt super smart. Like, yeah. I know where that is. That's in Denmark.
I wonder how Russian roulette is in Russia. I'm sure there is a version of it.
Yeah, I wonder what they would call it. I wonder what they call actual Russian roulette in Russia.
That's funny.
Well, what would they call... I don't want to look it up. I'm curious what they call it. If you at home know what they call Russian roulette in Russia, please let us know.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
And the guy who produced it, his name was Gunnar Wetterberg, I think his name is. He has a YouTube channel, and there are a lot of clips of there, and the international versions, and just little bits of the show in there. Pretty nostalgic. And
they interviewed him during that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I liked that. I remember really liking it at the time. I don't remember. We sit here and say that it was rare that somebody would win the 100,000. I don't remember many people winning the 10,000.
Oh no! Half the time people would just get a question wrong and mess up.
Yeah.
Or sometimes people would win 10,000 and be like, no, I don't want to risk it for 100,000. I'm not going to be greedy. I'm just going to keep the 10,000 and walk.
Did anybody? Because I know I've seen a lot of clips of people saying, I'll quit with the 10,000, and then they think, and like, oh, you wouldn't have won, you made the right choice. Do you know if there was anybody who ever won the 10,000, said, no, I'm not going to do it, spun, and then... Because what happens is, at the end, if you say, no, I'm not going to go for it, they still...
They say, oh, let's see what would have happened, a la Deal or No Deal.
Yeah, you pull the lever, and then you get off the platform, so you don't have to worry about falling through. So, did anyone ever do that, and it turned out that they would have won the 100,000?
That's happened at least once. I've seen it at least once. I might not have it, but I've seen it at least once.
Okay, I'll take your word.
Yeah.
I never saw it, but then again, I never saw many. I didn't see many people winning the 100,000. So.
Yeah, they also had a few celebrity episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know if you watched Lost. I haven't watched Lost, but there's a clip of actor Jorge Garcia before he was famous as a contestant.
Yep. What was his occupation? What did he say his occupation was? Like
he said he I think worked behind the scenes at a news station. I'm not 100% sure that's right. For
some reason I had it in my mind that he sold newspapers. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. But I remember they had an episode where they had Gary Coleman and Leif Garrett and Jerry Manthe from Survivor, and
that's a good episode.
Who was the other person?
That was Kato Kaelin.
Kato Kaelins.
What a guy.
The D-list trifecta, I think.
Yeah, O.J. Simpson's favorite house guest.
Yeah.
That's what they call it,
Yeah.
I think.
I don't know why he would have been the favorite. He testified against O.J. Oh, whatever. Well, not.
No, he said America's favorite house guest.
That makes much more sense.
Yes.
I liked it.
But,
It should have been on longer.
And they also had a lot of memorable contestants.
Yep.
I have a few clips of them on YouTube if you want to see. So yeah, overall good show. And Mark L. Wahlberg, do you think he was a good host?
Yes, I think there's a few hosts. We'll get to one later. I think he's one of the ones that should be listed among the greats of game show hosts, but just never really hosted anything, unfortunately, that lasted long enough, or the stuff that he did host that got national attention ended up being things you probably didn't want to be associated with, like Moment of Truth or Temptation Island.
I remember Moment of Truth.
Not a fun hour of television.
Oh no.
But again, he's a good host. Don't watch Moment of Truth. Watch something else.
Yeah, watch him on Antiques Roadshow on PBS.
Yeah. Or watch him as the host of Teen Win, Lose, or Draw.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Or watch him as the original sidekick on Shop Till You Drop.
I haven't seen that. I'll have to watch that.
I'll see if I can find one for you. We can link it in the description. You want to move on to Press Your Luck? Whammy?
Yeah, let's move on to Whammy.
Whammy, the all-new Press Your Luck, which I did not see until, I think... No! I am sorry, I did see it. I saw it one episode when I was a kid, and that was it.
That's all you've seen of it since then?
No, I've since watched more, but
okay.
when I was a kid, I watched one episode and never watched. Like Friend or Foe, I would watch... they did a GSN Saturday Night of Friend or Foe and Russian Roulette, so that's how I saw both of those. But I only saw one episode of Whammy, and the only reason I remember it is because for some reason, I think our cable provider only gave us GSN from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. and then 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. and then from 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. But for some reason, there was one Saturday where they didn't turn off the feed, so we got it for an extra 5 hours, and that's when I saw it.
Lucky.
Yep. The remake of the original Press Your Luck, starring Peter Tamarkin, and originally they wanted Peter to host.
He did host a pilot.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube, on Wink Martindale's channel.
Do we know why they didn't go with him, other than just age?
I haven't heard anything besides that, but yeah. I wonder how Todd Newton got the gig, too.
I'm curious. He's the one I would go with as saying he is the best modern game show host. And I think he deserves way more credit than he gets. I think he's the best.
Oh, yeah. And he sure knew how to... He didn't try to be Peter Tamarkin. Yeah. But they did bring back Peter Tamarkin for that one Larson rematch episode. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised they did that.
I'm not. I think it was one of those big things where they kind of wanted the moment more than anything.
They wanted to promote their Big Bucks documentary, which we'll talk about in a future episode, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, did the Big Buck... Which one came first? Didn't the documentary air before the Press Your Luck the episode with all three?
I think they might have aired simultaneously, to be honest. I don't know.
I mean, the same day, but okay. I think they aired the documentary, and then after the documentary they aired... immediately after the documentary they aired the episode.
Yeah, maybe. Because in the documentary, kind of portrayed him in a negative light. And on the show, they just said, oh, he was the guy, he figured out the code. But we have his brother here, and he's going to carry on the legacy against two people. Mm-hmm.
But with Whammy Press Your Luck, it's the original Press Your Luck, and I guess we have to explain how Press Your Luck worked, which is you answer questions, and that determines how many spins you get on the big board. And so... But they're not really spins, they're really more like turns. But a big light flashes around the board, and you hit a big red button to stop the board, and whatever it lands on gets added to your bank.
And if you land on a whammy, then you lose all your money. And if you get 4 whammies, then you're out of the game.
Yep. And you can pass your spins at any time, or you can play them, but whoever has the most money at the end of the show wins.
Correct.
Unless unless it's one of those weird situations, which I don't know if this ever happened on the new show, but it happened a few times on the original, where 2 of the contestants whammy out, and then you have one contestant who has no dollars.
And wins.
Yeah, because they didn't whammy out.
No, I do. That did happen on one episode of the Whammy. I know.
Of Whammy?
And they brought her back. Now here's what happened: 2 players got 4 whammies, and a lady with 3 whammies, one with $0. And on this show, they had a whammy costume guy come out in a whammy costume and just act stupid from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
And he came out and hugged the winning contestant who had $0.
Yeah.
And but she was brought back on a later show, because
this one didn't have returning champions like the original did.
It did not know.
So you won, but you didn't win. It's a very hollow victory, as they say. Yeah. But there were a few changes, like the double whammy, I remember, was a big thing.
Yeah, the double whammy basically. Also, these whammies were much more advanced. I don't know, advanced, but like more modernized. We'll say more CGI animation than the '80s version, obviously. So you would see that clip, and whatever like props or things were used in that clip would like come pouring down on you from the ceiling.
Yeah.
And you'd get messed. It wasn't like Double Dare, but
Yeah. Like the whammy would get tarred and feathered, and then feathers would come down and land on the contestant.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But it was a lot harder to win the big jackpot. Like, in order to win, because with the original show, there was a lot of times where contestants would get upwards of over, like, $15,000 per show. But in order to win the big bank, you needed to land on the space, and then you needed to answer a trivia question.
Yeah, that was only in season 2. What the big bank was, it took all the money that the whammy had taken from contestants, put it in this bank, and if you land on it, you get asked a trivia question, and if you get it right, you can take all the money that's in the big bank for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And then if you hit the whammy again, I guess, does it go back into the bank at that point?
Yeah, it goes back in.
Okay. Thus negating. And then in order to win a car, you got to get 2 different spaces. It's sort of like the license plates on Wheel of Fortune.
Mm-hmm.
Did anyone ever win the car on Whammy? I've never seen it.
I don't think on the normal. I think they did in the tournament, but I think that might have been the only time.
Okay. Because the odds were so low.
Yeah. The series finale was the Tournament of Champions, if I recall correctly.
Okay. I remember... That's such an odd show to have a Tournament of Champions. I remember Street Smarts also had a Tournament of Champions. I'm like, really?
Whammy also had a Tournament of Losers as well.
Mm-hmm. I've never liked Tournament of Losers shows, because it just gives opportunities to... Well, we'll save that for another day. So, but we get a new computerized board. So whereas the original board was like 18 CRT monitors that just flashed prizes, and a light that very slowly moved around the board, with the Whammy board, everything was being processed by one Pentium computer, and the light was just randomly flashing around, and all the prizes were flashing around. So there was no true way to memorize the pattern like on the original show.
Yeah, the original version had, well, we all know it originally had 5 sequences, but someone had to memorize them and take $100,000. And then they added it was 32 sequences. Or
32.
Yeah, 32.
32 with 5 emergency sequences, in case something like that happened.
Yeah. And then Whammy was just a random. So.
Mm-hmm. But they only had 1 round, because the first round was... If you remember, I think it was like this for both seasons, where you can go as long as you want, but every round they add more whammies to the board.
Yeah, the first round basically was like it was different from the original. The original show had a question round, spin round, then twice.
Yeah, then a second round.
Yeah, and then Whammy in the first round, each player would get I think it was $1,000 at the beginning, and then they would go take turns one at a time. So player 1 would go, player 2 would go, player 3 would go, and then. After one turn, they'd ask him, okay, do you want to press your luck or freeze? If you freeze, you get to just keep that money and take that in the next round, but you can't spin for the rest of the round. You have to wait until the other people. And if you hit 1 whammy in the first round, then that means you're out for the rest of the round.
Yeah. And that whammy carries over. So, like you said, 4 whammies, you're done. That whammy carries over to round 2.
Yeah.
And they add more and more whammies to the board.
Yeah, to make it tougher. Yeah. Because they didn't want the first round to last too long.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Well, I think they also want to ensure that, because it's also a way to keep the prize wins naturally low.
True.
Mm-hmm. I think Whammy, the all-new Press Your Luck was good. I think it just sort of suffered under the fact that Game Show Network was really sort of moving away from originals at that point.
Yeah. Because most of these shows were all canceled around the same time because GSN, Game Show Network was going to become GSN and do reality shows and basketball, Extreme Dodgeball, I think it was. Yeah. So it's like...
the World Series of blackjack
Yeah.
is what I remember. Which
But
I'm grateful that I didn't have Game Show Network at that time, because that would have really pulled me inside.
But Whammy did stay in reruns on GSN longer than any other of these shows, if any. I don't know why they picked Whammy of all the shows. Maybe because it was like Pressure Luck and,
It had a name value. It had a more marquee value over something like Friend or Foe, which was something that they had created themselves. Like Whammy had people who watched it in 2000, and Whammy people who liked the original Press Your Luck associated that with the original, so that was something.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I liked Whammy a lot.
I did too.
Mm-hmm.
How do you like Todd Newton in comparison to Peter Tomarken?
I mean, it's hard. It's like comparing. Well, because they're not the same host. They're two different hosts. I think they're both good, and it's hard for me to bag on Peter Tomarken because he didn't have. Press Your Luck was really the show he is most closely associated with.
And it's not Hitman.
Yeah, as much as I love Hitman, I'm well aware of the fact that most people know him from Press Your Luck, if at all. They don't know him from Wipeout. So was Wipeout, Press Your Luck, Hitman?
Bargain Hunters.
I don't even remember Bargain Hunters, so.
I never saw it, but I heard it was awful. I read a Game for Garbage article about it.
I'm more than willing to bet that. And then the interstitial stuff they did on Game Show Network that I never saw. So.
Oh yeah, in 1994, Peter Tomarken was a guy on Game Show Network. Even though they didn't show Pressure Your Luck until 2001, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. 2001 or 2, because that's when they got the rights from Carruthers, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
They'd acquired it at that point. Yeah. It's hard. I don't know. I don't like to compare hosts. I think if you do a good job as a host, you're good.
Okay.
So they both did good. I'll say that.
I agree.
I will play the. I will make no statement. Poor work on. They were both good. You want to do Win Tuition?
Yeah, let's talk about Win Tuition for a
Win
few
Tuition, the obscuralicious Win Tuition, which is so obscure that I think there's maybe one episode online, and maybe two.
Mm-hmm.
It's the April Fool's episode's online. I know that.
The April Fools.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that for a minute. Now, April Fool's 2003. All of these originals they switched hosts except for Lingo. Here's what happened. Friend or Foe was hosted by Mark L. Wahlberg, which is why I briefly joked about that earlier in the podcast. Mm-hmm. And their Russian Roulette was hosted by Todd Newton of Whammy.
Mm-hmm.
And Friend or Foe.
Who did Whammy? It was
Graham Elwood from Cram.
Cram did Whammy. Win Tuition was hosted by Kennedy.
Right.
And then I guess Mark Summers didn't want to host nothing, so.
No, Mark Summers hosted Cram.
Oh, he hosted Cram? Oh, yeah, he did, that's right.
And Lingo was basically, Chuck still hosted that, but they had teams of Mark L. Wahlberg and Mark Summers versus Kennedy and Graham Elwood, which is a very funny episode.
And Todd Newton was the announcer.
Yeah, he did a good job.
Win Tuition is a show where they have 3 contestants, and they ask them high school type questions.
Yeah, well, they take it from grade school. I think it's from like kindergarten first to 12th grade in the 3 rounds. I think it is.
So it's like Make the Grade on Nickelodeon, slightly, but not really. And
I do remember, it's probably worthy of noting since there's not much known about this show, that in one of those blooper specials, it might have been just a stupid game show answers compilation, but Mark Summers asked the question, name a prime number between 20 and 40, and this contestant buzzes in and says, 7.
Yep. I hope everyone at home is able to name a prime number between 20 and 40. 23.
Yeah, not 7.
Yeah, maybe 37. Is 37 a prime number?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it is. Okay. I don't feel stupid now. Yeah,
I never watched Mark. I don't remember much about Win Tuition because it was so obscure. But I do remember I do have promos of it on that tape that my dad made in 2002.
I've seen more promos than I've seen episodes, but the final round was sort of like Russian roulette. And one of the reasons I suspect why it was so short lived is you had to answer 10 questions, and if you did, you got $50,000 towards your education.
Right.
And that's what. Go ahead.
That was a good thing, the $50,000.
Yeah, but that's I think why it was so short lived, because I think the prize budget probably couldn't handle too many $50,000 wins.
Russian roulette knew how to make it impossible.
Not impossible. Not impossible, but highly unlikely.
Yeah, yeah.
That which, by the way, for those if you did you watch The Chase on Game Show Network?
Oh yeah, I did.
That's I think one of the maybe someone may know more than I do, but I think that's the reason why that didn't last long is because the prize budget for that show just ended up getting eclipsed because I think they just couldn't handle so much giving away so much money on a cable budget.
Yeah, but there were a lot of times when the Beast outsmarted the 3 players and took all the money away.
Right, but even then you still have one win and it's in the several $100,000.
True.
Per season. You have 2 of those. That's $500,000. So, I mean, again, someone may know something I don't, but that's what I've always suspected as to why it ended because it was a huge show and it was getting massive ratings.
Oh yeah.
At the time. Yeah. So yeah, Win Tuition. Mark Summers from Double Dare hosted.
Mm-hmm. I wonder how he got the gig to host this show about where they take it through school in a half hour.
I don't know. Didn't he host another show that was basically the same thing on History Channel?
I don't know.
Okay, yeah, maybe someone out there knows. I know he hosted another show that was very academic.
Are you talking about History IQ?
That's it, Haikyuu.
Okay. Yeah, I never saw that, but I've read about it before.
I've seen one episode, the Tournament of Champions episode, like we talked about before.
Oh, okay.
So there was a prerequisite for it. But most people, of course, my generation knows him from, well, I guess not my generation, but the generation before me knows him from Double Dare. I know him from Family Double Dare.
Yeah, most people of my generation know him at all from Fruit Network and shows like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I loved him. Did you ever watch Trivia Unwrapped?
I did not.
That's a good one. That one should have been longer. I liked that one. Yeah, we don't have much to say because we there's not really much out there other than it's a fine show, it's a fine format, but it's just
only last few months.
Yeah. You want to go to Cram?
Yeah, let's go to Cram.
Cram, I think I remember hearing promos for Cram, but I never saw Cram at the time. So, Cram is 2 teams of 2 are locked in a display, like a store display.
It's like a Hollywood storefront.
A Hollywood storefront display.
They can't sleep at all.
They are not allowed to sleep. Okay, I wasn't sure if they weren't allowed to sleep, or if they just were told. Okay, that makes more sense. So they're not allowed to sleep, and every question they'll be asked, they're given every answer to, but they've got to study it. So it's you're not in college yet, but it's basically a cram session. It's where they cram all night long.
Yes.
And then
they're brought back into the games into the studio in a Saturn Ion, which I don't know why I remember that part, but anyway,
they heavily promoted that Saturn Ion, didn't they?
Oh yeah, they did. And then the first round they put them on hamster wheels and just have them talk about articles and stuff they've read before.
Mm-hmm. And you're not allowed to repeat. You're not allowed to go or for every or pause.
You lose like 5-10 points or something.
Yeah, and for repetitions, I believe also you lose points. And the object is to get 5 keywords said. For every keyword you say, you get $50 or $100.
Yeah.
And both teams do it for 2 different subjects. And then at the end, but again, everything that they're asked to do is based on stuff that they've been given, stuff to study while they were in that storefront.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, this show was produced and Jonathan Goodson was in charge of the show, I think, because I remember seeing. Yeah, because at the end of the credits, you'd see Jonathan Goodson Productions at the end. I don't know if he created the show, but yeah.
And then the second round, they would have to do something physical in order to keep a timer going, like row a boat or pedal a bike.
Pedal a bike, and then one of them was the host, Graham Elwood, would tell them knock jokes or. I don't know if knock jokes, but I remember there was one where it was your mama jokes and then other stupid stuff like that. Which again
they had been given, they had to study.
Yeah. And this bonus round was pretty interesting because here's what they did: they put the 2 members of the winning team, they make them go to sleep, and then they'd have this character named Miss Pickwick, I think it was.
Miss Pickwick.
Yeah, she would read mundane facts about stuff. I'm pretty sure they were told the night before. She just said them, and then some sleepy music would play in the background, lullaby music would play in the background, and she would say it, and then about 6 minutes later, Graham Elwood would whisper to the camera and say, "Okay, they're gonna be waking up in about 30 seconds, and I'm gonna make them tell it," and they would have to stand on a balance beam and answer the questions, and for every time they would step they step on, if they fell on the ground or if 1 foot fell on the ground, grammar would have to restart the question.
Yeah.
And, yeah, that was tough.
And they were lying in bed, they were wearing blindfolds, and it's basically everything they could do to get them to fall asleep while reading incredibly boring facts to them.
Yeah.
And then all the questions were based on those facts that were read to them in that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And if they got 5 right in a row, they won. But how it worked was, if you get the question right, you get a point, and then if you get another one right, you get another point, so you have 2 points, but then if you get the question wrong, you lose a point. So you have to accumulate 5 points.
Yeah. Although, and I mean, it wasn't impossible to win $10,000, because there were more than one time when people did.
Yeah. I've seen clips, so I don't remember them doing it. I remember there was a game you could play on GSN.com that was like Cram, where you had to... They gave you all the... Maybe this was something... No. Okay, I'm remembering something Pac Dude created. Never mind. For some reason, I had a memory... Because I know that they had an Inquisition game on Game Show Network's website.
Oh, wow.
And I think they may have even had a... No, maybe that was it. Okay, never mind.
They had a Lingo Plus game, I remember.
They did? Okay, I'll take your word.
GSN Interactive. Rest in peace.
Those are the days. Yeah, the leaderboard. Oh, all these shows had the leaderboard aspect to them.
Oh, yeah, that's always nostalgic to look at.
The leaderboard was something they would... Like, contestants would play along online at home, and your prize was... I guess you didn't really win an actual prize, other than they would interstitial the leaderboard in during the commercial break.
And coming back, too.
Yep.
Well.
So Cram, I think, was... I mean, it's an interesting format. I just think it kind of suffered. It would have worked better maybe on another network.
Yeah. Maybe Comedy Central would be the network for this kind of show.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. Because it sort of fit with the Ben Stein's money, win Ben Stein's money type thing.
Have you ever seen Distraction?
Yes, I have. I have 2 episodes, I think. Both of the US one, not the UK one.
Okay. It was really popular in the UK, and it briefly ran on Comedy Central for a while, both with the same host, Jimmy Carr.
Yeah.
He's hilarious.
I just remember one, because the British one had to... Because they showed clips of the British one on the Bananas special.
Game show on Bananas. Yeah.
Where they put rubber bands on your face, and whoever fit the most rubber bands on their face, like, got a free trip to the next round. So. Yeah. You want to You want to go to your favorite?
Oh, yeah. This is the show that, it's my profile picture on YouTube, and it's the show that sometimes gets me the most views, Lingo.
Lingo.
It's also the one that ran the longest out of all these shows.
How long was... We're not going to talk about the Bill Engvall, but how long was the Chuck Woolery version on for?
5 years.
5 years? How many? 5 seasons or 5?
I think it was 6 seasons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lingo, which was a failed... short-lived 80s game show hosted by Ronald Reagan's son from his first marriage. Yep. And then eventually...
I think it's an adopted son, but yeah.
And then eventually hosted by the producer whose name was it Ralph Andrews?
Yeah.
Ralph Andrews hosted because I guess the paychecks fell through. And then again, that's the big thing about the original Lingo was that people didn't get the money.
Yeah, I heard about that.
But so, I guess somehow Game Show Network got it. Well, actually, no, because it started airing in the Netherlands. The format was sold in the
Netherlands, and it was popular in the Netherlands in the 90s, too.
And then Game Show Network got a hold of it, and they decided to make their version of it, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the first season was filmed on the Dutch set with...
It was.
Yeah, with Americans living abroad in the Netherlands, if I remember correctly.
That's how they did it, yeah. And that season is very fun.
And then after that, they built a set in the U.S., and they gave Chuck a co-host.
Right. Well, no, they gave Chuck a co-host in season 3, and then they went through 3 different sets. Sure.
You know them better than I do. I just know 3 co-hosts.
Okay.
But how it worked was Lingo. You know what? I'm going to let the fan explain it. Danny, you explain how Lingo works. I'm just going to sit here in fascination while you explain it.
Oh, okay. Lingo, let's see. You get a 5-letter word. You get the first letter of that word. Then each player takes turns guessing what it could be. They have to say the word, then they spell it out. And sometimes it's really, actually, it's not what you say, it's what you spell, which we'll get to later. So if you spell it, then you'll see either an orange, yellow, or blank light come up. If it's whatever orange lights pop up are in the word, and then you'll see them in the next choice. And if it has a yellow on it, that means it's in the word, but it's in the wrong place. And so yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah, and the object
trying to spell out 5-letter words.
Sort of like a word version of Mastermind, if you've ever played that game.
Yeah.
And surprisingly well, it was on for 5 years, and then it was 2 teams of 2 competing against each other, and usually they knew each other.
Oh yeah. And some of those contestants met each other in unusual ways, because I have an episode from the first season. It was when it was 2 girls. One of them saw the other one sitting down on a stoop, and she was listening to an Earth, Wind, and Fire CD. So she put her headphones on her partner's ears, and she just got up and started dancing, and that's how they met. What a weird story.
Unusual ways of meeting people. I feel like, yeah.
Ended up too. So yeah. Anything else?
Well, no, let's go to the so basically, which leads to a lot of fun moments, which I'm sure we'll link clips to in this, which leads to fun misspellings of words.
Oh yeah, there were so many of them in the first season, and there's a compilation of one on YouTube called Lingo Flubs. If you want to see that, we'll probably put a link of it later.
But if you're able to spell the word within 5 tries, then what happens is you get to pull little colored balls out of a hopper, kind of like I'm trying to think, what would you pull it? It's sort of like a hop. You can't see what's inside the balls inside the hopper. You put your hand in, you pull out a ball, and it's like bingo at that point. Yeah, you try to get it's like you get a bingo, so it'll say like O37 or I-54. Well, I won't say those because it's not.
It doesn't say the letter; it just says the number.
Okay, but you try to get a lingo or a bingo. You try to get any 5 row, and if you do, you get 100 points added to your total. And the team with the most amount of points wins the game.
At the end of 2 rounds with the most points, because they go to one lingo. And a tiebreaker only happened a total of 3 times.
Yep. And the tiebreaker was a 7-letter word that they slowly spell it for you, and then if you ring in and get it right, you win, and if you ring in and you're wrong, your opponents win by default.
I'm not sure if they win by default. I don't know.
Okay. I remember one where they got it wrong and the opponent got it, but I don't remember if it was by default or if they just put all the words up at that point and said, what's the or put all the letters up and said, what's the word? It's like, well, it says right there. I would have to look for it, but...
That's also a good technique. Let's talk about bonus lingo.
Yep.
So bonus lingo, you get 2 minutes to guess as many 5-letter words as you can. For each word you get $100 and a lingo ball.
Under the same rules that apply to the first round.
Right. Yeah. And if you get lingo in the bonus round, then I think it was
$5,000.
In the first season it was $5,000. Then and season 2 they did it where if you get it on the first try, I think it was like $15,000 and a vacation.
You pull it again. You pull out a ball for every word you get. You pull a ball out of the hopper and in hope of getting a lingo.
Yeah,
and there's always one during the bonus round. There's always one lone number where if you pull that number out, you will win automatically.
Correct. As soon as they give you the board, they'll pick all the numbers and they'll say, okay, if you draw this number on the first try, you get $50,000 in the vacation. Mm-hmm. And it's in the last season they had a progressive jackpot, which it got as high as $41,000, and they won that. So that was nice.
Yep. I like Lingo. It's hard to say I wish it had been on longer because it was on for longer than it. I think that's the longest running original Game Show Network show, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah.
So, again, I don't know why they canceled it. We talk about what would happen later with Lingo. I'd rather not. Maybe someday.
Yeah. Billing ball.
Yeah. So, but I think Lingo. We haven't even talked. Who was the host of Lingo?
It was Chuck Woolery.
2 and 2.
He's a legendary host.
Yep. Just off of, I believe, Greed.
Oh, yeah.
Was the previous show. Lingo, which I think was a great show for him.
Oh, yes. And there was one time when Greed was the 5-letter puzzle and the contestants guessed it correctly, and Chuck said, oh, that's one of my favorite shows. Thank you so much.
Yep. Another show that should have been on longer. Yeah. I think Chuck's great as a host. You may not agree with his politics. Yeah, I don't know that I agree with his politics, but who cares? He's a great host.
Correct. And lingo, and it's also talk about in the bonus round they'll give you something called free letters or
bonus letter.
Bonus letters, yeah. But for every lingo you got during the game, you get a bonus letter, and then you also get one for winning the game. But in the first season, they didn't have that, so they kind of really didn't give you much help, and that caused one team to win $0, not get any words, and then after the round was over, they got no words. Then that was the end of the show because they couldn't draw any balls.
Very rare, which is probably why they added it, because you kind of want that caveat to sort of help them out.
Yeah, that was the only time it happened, and that's why they added bonus letters in the second season.
I think the bonus letters work. I like the bonus letters.
I agree.
Because it's not like it gives you, they don't give you the word, like it's not, if we know 4 letters in the word, like you can't bonus letter to get the final letter.
Well, some people have used that technique.
You can?
They let you do that in the bonus round.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you could do that in the bonus round.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, fine. I'll shut up. Either way, I like the bonus letter format.
Me too.
Because the original format back in the 80s was way more convoluted. It was for every row it took you to guess the word, you'd have to draw a ball from the hopper, and the object at that point was to not get lingo.
Oh yeah. So. That's weird. I never saw the 80s version.
It's very, if you're used to the new one, it's very confusing compared to the original. I recommend Lingo with Chuck Woolery. Watch that version. Don't watch the original or the subsequent one. I think so. I liked Lingo. I'm gonna shut up and let the Lingo fan go on about Lingo for the next 5 minutes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, Lingo, good show. It gets me a lot of views. In fact, that was the first video I uploaded to my channel about 3 years ago. And when I first started getting into game show trading, which you also do, Josh, if I'm not mistaken.
You are correct.
The first season of Lingo was one of my most sought after shows because it was so rare, and I never really seen much because GSN hasn't shown that season since 2004 because they had like different rules, and I'm not so sure if the different set had anything to do with it, but yeah.
There's weird reasons why they don't I mean, we've talked about caveats, which is probably something we should talk about in the future. Shows that for some strange reason have errors that they don't rerun.
Oh yeah.
Like there was one that they didn't rerun. They didn't rerun forever, and it was for like the stupidest reason.
What was that?
I'm trying to remember. It was like no, I guess that was a valid reason. I was going to say remember the Family Feud with Ray Combs?
Yeah.
They didn't rerun that for a long time, but then they changed it once. Like I think they chopped it down because the show was an hour, and then they chopped it down to half an hour in order to do it. So they showed that. But there was another one. There was another one where they didn't show it forever, and it was for some really arbitrary reason, and I can't remember what. And someone listening knows and is going to comment and tell us what idiots we are for not knowing off the top of our heads.
Was it a GSN original?
I think so, or it was something GSN owned. It was something they showed.
I know that they didn't show the first season of Catch 21 for a long time. I don't think they have since 2008 or 9.
Yeah. But they showed the subsequent ones?
Yeah, they did. Season 2 on. Because the first season of that show had a different set, but the game was pretty much the same. So.
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of episodes of Match Game they don't rerun for various reasons.
Yeah, like celebrity clearances or offensive jokes in them.
Yeah. It's 2018. We can't say that word now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, those are the Game Show Network originals. Well, the original game shows. We didn't talk about the Press Your Luck scandal, or I guess we could talk a little bit about Naturally Stoned. I haven't seen it. I know you have.
Naturally Stoned. That was our reality show that they followed Chuck Woolery around with a camera for a half hour, and it only lasted 6 episodes. I have, I think, 3 or 4 of them in my collection. But they did one segment where I think Wink Martindale has this posted on his channel, but they did a behind-the-scenes thing of Lingo. This guy guessed a word, weld, W-E-A-L-D, and it showed like a 5-minute argument between the producers and the guys on the headsets and Chuck saying, oh, is this a word or is it not? Or let's look in the dictionary, is it? And then there was a whole fight about it, and they threw out the puzzle after the whole argument was done.
And now we know why they have a co-host.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which those
What about?
for those who don't know, Naturally Stoned was Chuck Woolery's big hit single in the 60s.
Yeah, it was a song he did. And this show also kind of divorced him and his wife at that time.
Yeah. I don't even remember who his wife was at that point.
It was someone named Terry Nelson.
Okay. Is he remarried? I don't keep up with Chuck Woolery's personal life, so.
According to Wikipedia, he is. So.
Okay, I assumed so.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard to remember that there was a time where Chuck Woolery was much more noted as a singer than as a presenter, but that changed, so.
Yeah, that's because Merv Griffin wanted him to... No, wait, no, that's Pat Sajak. Never mind.
Merv Griffin, Pat Sajak. Yeah, Merv Griffin, and then Reg Grundy, and then whoever the hell made Love Connection. I don't know who made that.
Oh, yeah.
And then, yeah. So, good on you, Chuck. You were a good host. You still are, I assume. I don't know. You haven't hosted anything in a while.
Yeah. And GSN hasn't shown Lingo in a while, I don't think.
I don't think so either. Game Show Network, air some of your originals. They were good. They weren't perfect, but they were better than, a lot of the stuff you're hearing now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Lingo.
Well, I guess that's it for this podcast, unless you want to add more.
I know that one of the co-hosts, they went through two co-hosts, you know who they both are?
No idea. I'm sure you have it.
Oh. Well, one of them, Shandy Fennessy, who was there until the end of the series, he went to, I don't know, high school or college, one of those two with one of my uncles, because she grew up in Florissant, and I'm not from Florissant, but I'm in that area.
That's cool.
St. Louis.
Good luck trying to meet her. Didn't she do an interview at some? I'm sure she did. Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, Game Show Network did a lot of specials afterwards, I know, where they did top tens, but not worth remembering. We'll talk about those in the future, maybe. Anyway, so...
I got one more question for you.
Okay, go ahead.
What is your favorite of the shows we talked about?
Oh, okay. Lingo.
Yeah,
it's an easy pick, but it's Lingo.
I'll go with Lingo as well.
It's the simplest to play, it's the easiest to view, and it's Lingo.
Alright.
We're going to play it easy, Lingo. Okay, so I guess that's it for this episode of Game Show Fans Podcast. I'm Josh McLeod.
I'm Danny Lewis.
And from us to you, remember, it's always hard to see the end when you're beginning. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Advertising Network for great more content like this one.